is we're attracting strong talent, but they're staying. And I think that is the most important part, because we are able to provide that system for them so that they want to keep coming back.
How does your work culture encourage people to grow, to take risks and push out the boundaries so they innovate, to think beyond the obvious and create the impossible? I'm Dr. Joey Fawcett, coaching you to create a work-positive culture that grows people and profits. My guest today brings a wealth of experience from both K-12 and higher education that will help you and me navigate the changing landscape of learning and development today. She understands what it is to endure adversity and learn due to her long-standing battle with multiple sclerosis. She refuses to let the condition hinder her aspirations or cloud her why. She believes there's always an opportunity to grow and there's always an opportunity to learn. So let's learn together on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Work Positive Nation, wow, I hope you're ready to learn. It's an amazing episode you're listening to right now because Dr. Megan Waldron is in the house. Meg, thank you for being on the Work Positive Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I am super excited too because you live with your one foot in one world and one foot in another. So one foot's in the real world where we mere mortals live, and your other foot is in a major university. So you are educating, shaping, influencing, forming young minds every day. What's that like to straddle these two worlds?
Yeah, well, hopefully I have the same pair of shoes on. Sometimes I have to make sure I'm
mismatched shoes.
That has happened to my youngest son going to school. But yeah, so I think it really honestly has been awesome to have the perspective. My career was in K-12. After the pandemic, I moved over to higher ed, and I've had my small business throughout the whole time. So I think it really provides perspective. I know the world that my students are coming from, and I'm starting to know the world that they are now in higher ed. And then I guess in terms of our small business, just kind of helping students navigate through those transitions from one world to the next. So it's been awesome to have that perspective. And I think it also keeps me humble because I remember how hard it is to learn something all over again. I think a lot of times as adults, we stay where we're comfortable because it's easier. And moving into higher ed, I had to get humble really quickly because there was a lot I did not know. So it's been a learning curve for sure.
Well, yeah, the first thing to go is your ego, right? Because you discover what you don't know. Well, one of my favorite lines is when I'm about to ask a question, I'm not stupid, and yet I am ignorant. So help cure my ignorance. So I love what you're talking about. It sounds like your shoes do match, although in one of those worlds, I think hip waders or boots would be required apparel. But anyway, maybe you got matching boots. So what is your superpower? What do you regard as your origin story of how you got to where you are today and the way that your superpower developed in helping us learn? Because you said so much about we adult learners just a moment ago, but in terms of helping us learn and grow and develop, how'd you get into this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to belong somewhere and they want to, really fit in the place where they are and whatever that might look like. And that changes for a lot of us throughout our careers. So I think when I go back to K-12, for me, I felt at home because of the relationships I built there, whether it was with colleagues, obviously really close relationships with a lot of my students and having their siblings and whatnot. But I was also really fortunate to just be surrounded by people who really cared about what they were doing. And it was not, Dr. Joey, until I left teaching that I realized that teachers are like a whole different breed of humans. They work.
They're superhumans. It's a superhuman race.
Have the best boundaries because they're working on weekends. They're grading at, their kids' lacrosse game. And you just don't see that in other sectors. And so I think, it really boils down to, regardless of where you are, those relationships are the impetus of whether or not you're going to have a good experience. And I think for a lot of people, once they recognize that the relationships aren't working for them, that's when there's a time to shift. So for me, it really, at the end of the day, boils down to who you're working with and is it a positive place where you want to be? And if it's not, what's next?
So, what was it that attracted you into this whole learning and development
Yeah.
space to start with? Granted, it was K-12, but what drew you there? Did you have, like so many of us, have an important teacher in our lives as we're growing
Right.
up?
Yeah. Well, my mom's an educator. She was a PE
Ah,
teacher. But I did not want to go into education. I actually have a double degree in English and Spanish. I moved out to the West Coast and I actually started teaching English as a second language to adults. And
uh-huh.
it just really clicked. And I knew no matter what, I was going to get sucked into this. So I came back as a provisional teacher and worked right outside of Washington, D.C. in a very
Uh,
diverse school with a lot of barriers for our students.
uh-huh.
And I would call it a love-hate relationship, but it was those relationships that I was talking to you about that really kept me in that space. I just went to
Mm.
Puerto Rico this summer with four of the teachers. We worked together as 21-year-olds. Now we're not 21. Put it that way. But I think those are the kinds of experiences that keep you in those places. But in terms of starting Smart Solutions, I met another small business owner. He had a tutoring company up in Northern Virginia. And when I had my oldest son, I wanted to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom, but I didn't want to leave the education world. And he said, there's plenty of business for everybody. He didn't have that scarcity mindset. And he
Yeah.
called me and he said, let me walk you through how to set up an LLC and how to start a business. And that was in 2007. So we've been going strong ever since. So I think I kind of fell into it by accident, but I think it's been a labor of love that, I call it my only daughter. I've had it all the way through. So we're approaching 20 years.
I love it. I love it. And I laugh out loud because the things which we say, we'll never do, I'll never go into education because, seeing what it did to my mom and da 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 da. It's hilarious that we wind up doing what we say we won't do, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Well, my mom
uh,
loved her job. She had K-3. She taught PE. She loved it. And
that's
it's funny.
sweet.
Now I'm married to a PE teacher who, also loves. It was like watching me grading all the papers, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. PE teachers don't grade papers, right? Great outcomes. I love it. That is amazing. In the show notes, Work Positive Nation, we have smartsolutionsva.com. You heard Meg mention that a moment ago. We'll talk more about what you'll find there, but just go there and click. And while you're listening, just be sure to check that out. We'll talk more about what's there in a few moments. So, constantly learning seems to describe where we find ourselves in the work world today.
yes.
The pace of change, of course, so much of it's driven by technology, right? Every 18 months, right? Computing power has just gone bonkers right now in terms of what we can produce, what we can do. I read a study recently that said our ability to learn is being stunted by AI. And they really have fMRIs that show the brain atrophying
Right.
and
Yes,
things like that. It's just kind of crazy, isn't it? Adults do like to stay where they are in terms of learning, and yet some of us, maybe adrenaline junkies, we do, we do like to learn new stuff and get out there and try stuff and push to the edge. One of the things that's really interesting, I want to talk more about in your background is how do we create psychologically safe environments, cultures,
Mhm.
right? Where adults say, hey, it's okay to try something new, to learn something new. My friend Dr. Bob Johansen talks about helping adults move to the edge of their competence, to fail graciously, to learn from it, and to move forward from there. How do we help people in that we work with today who are naturally resistant to change or trying something new? How do we help them in a psychologically safe culture to be able to move forward and learn something?
Yeah, I really think in my experience, at least, I think agency and autonomy is the game changer. So, at least in education, teachers go into that field usually because they're pretty creative. So, not only are they, a lot of them, strong with kids and they have those soft skills, but
Hmm.
they want to figure out, they want to study those students and figure out how to reach them. And you give a teacher a canned curriculum and that light goes out, it's just gone.
Yeah, it
So,
does.
I think what has worked, at least in our small business, is that our teachers have full agency over what their classes look like. So we provide those safety nets of here's a curriculum and some things that we've done that have worked, take it or leave it. So you're the professional, you have the degrees, we hired you because of who you are and the reputation you have, and we know you're great with kids. So we're going to get back and get out of the way a little bit, but we're here if you
Mm.
need us. And I think that is not the feeling that most educators have now. If you really look at the education crisis that's happening in the United States, teachers are not feeling like they're treated as professionals. So you're seeing them leave in droves. So I think that space where people are willing to learn and they're willing to try new things, they feel supported when there's some autonomy that they have the skill set to do that. As soon as they feel like they don't have the ability to do it, they're going to kind of hold back because they feel like they're being judged. That's my take on it, but it seems
Wow. Yeah.
it's been a game changer.
Yeah. So give us a working definition of agency, and then we'll talk about autonomy. What's your working definition of agency, and why is it so important?
I mean, I think for a lot of teachers, when they have the agency to pick and choose what they want to do, when they want to do it, in the fashion that they want it to happen in, at least
Mm.
in our model, that's where we see the needle move. We have a relatively younger teacher. He's in his, I believe, fifth year. He was actually my student teacher during the pandemic, and we recruited him. He's awesome. And he came to me and said, Meg, I really want to teach SAT prep. Well, I am not a fan of multiple choice. That is not my strong suit. International baccalaureate teacher, no multiple choice. And I
Yeah.
said, Chris, I don't know. I know a lot about the SAT. It's just not my wheelhouse. But if you want to teach this, you're great at it. He was bringing up student scores, but he was creating all this programming on his own.
Wow.
So we said, hey, you go out, you partner with the company, you set up the meeting. We'll help you. We'll meet with you, and then you run the show, and we'll support you. And he's on his third class now. And I think having that ability to really go out and do that on his own and know that we're going to support him. And if he messes up, it's okay, right? Like there wasn't a huge investment in this. I think that can really help people feel empowered, and that gives them a lot of agency over what they're doing. Um,
Mm. Mm.
yeah, that's just a
Love
recent,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, so Dan Pink, of course, helped all of us in his book Drive to understand the importance of autonomy. How does agency best interact with autonomy in creating a culture that's positive and engages adults to learn?
Yeah, I mean, I think when people feel that they have the ability to make those choices and that they're going to be supported, even if it's not always in alignment with how it's been done. So if
Mm.
there's a certain way that I teach my classes. My husband is also an instructor, and because we teach on Zoom, I can hear him. We the setup of our classes are drastically different, and I think that you can have that agency, but you also need to have the ability to kind of do it how you want to do it and know that the people who are with you are going to be supportive. So that culture of belonging and knowing that it might look a little bit different for everybody, but we all have the same finish line. So we want our students to succeed, and we're seeing that in record numbers. Once we really we were in silos before, Dr. Joey, before the pandemic. Our teachers
Mhm.
were just an individual, they were independent contractors. They had their individual contracts. And when I moved to the higher ed setting and I was on a small team and I saw, oh my gosh, we can do this from a hybrid approach at the university. Why can't I do this with my teachers as well? And so we moved to a team teaching model. And the teachers really loved that because they had that support system, but they still had a lot of autonomy to kind of pick and choose what their classes would look like, but with that built in kind of safety net, with
Mm.
another instructor.
Mm. I love it. You're reminding me of my friend up in Minnesota, Jody Thompson, who was really a pioneer in creating an autonomous work culture with her ROWE system, ROWE, results only work environment. So agency and autonomy fit right into that space. But when I'm seeking to attract top talent into
Hmm.
my work culture, right? I'm almost going to get the you got to be kidding me, are you for real side eye look
Right.
from a candidate when I start talking about agency and autonomy because they're going to be like, okay, that sounds good, but I don't really trust that you do that. How do I communicate that this kind of autonomous, agency-based culture is the real deal?
Right. So, in full disclosure, all of our teachers, we all work full time. So, we are all in the classroom full time. And then we are teaching these classes outside of our full time jobs. So, I
Mm.
think it's really important to say that because I think there is a difference if you are doing this full time, that there probably is a little bit of a different structure. But with that
Yeah.
being said, going back to your other point about teachers kind of feeling that burnout, most of our
Mm.
teachers have been with us between 5 and 7 years.
Mm.
So, I guess one benefit is we're attracting strong talent, but they're staying. And I think that is the most important part because we are able to provide that system for them so that they want to keep coming back. They want to teach, different classes. We have some teachers that are creative writing specialists, others, like I mentioned, that are stronger in the academic world with SAT prep. We have a couple that help students prep for Stanford, their interviews. So we really kind of play into their strengths. So in terms of attracting talent, we just hired a new teacher this week. She actually broke our mold. Well, actually, there's two. One was a homeschool educator, and one is coming from the higher ed world. So before, we only attracted K-12 educators, but we see the needs of our clients shifting. So we've also shifted to who we're looking to bring onto the team and what they can kind of offer to the clients, but also to us because we're learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
So it really has not been a very hard sell, if I'm being really honest, because they have that opportunity to take clients and take classes that they want, but we also fully recognize that work-life balance. So we have some that have double-digit clients. They work with tons of students and families. We have some that say, Meg, I'm only willing to work with like 4 families this week. And then, you can pass it off to somebody else. So I think just really kind of seeing what the needs of those instructors has been why they stick around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hear the side hustle aspect of that, and I guess it does allow you to color a little bit more outside the lines but yet I hear you saying that our clients' needs have changed. What are some of those changes that you're hearing?
Well, for one, Dr. Joey, when I've been in education since 2000. So in
Wow.
26 years, right, when I had students that first applied for college, they might pick 3 schools. Colleges used all different platforms. So they use different, usually they had their own way that a student would apply, either, honestly, with a paper application in some cases.
Oh.
Now students predominantly go through the Common App. So last year, on average, our students were applying between 15 and 20 universities, some of them sight unseen, some of
Wow.
them 3 to 4 supplemental essays. So you're talking a large volume of student writing that is needed, highly competitive programs. So we had to shift to be able to meet the needs of those students and to help organize them. This was something that really just didn't even really exist in that way, I would say 10 years ago.
Mm.
States offer free applications now, so students are just, applying away. So the needs of our students changed in terms of that process. And then, quite honestly, the skill levels have decreased a lot in reading and writing. We know that nationally. So we
Mm.
had to find different ways to engage our students and to support our parents as well.
Mm. You mentioned a moment ago 5 to 7 years average tenure on your team members. What are some of the keys? I mean, I heard you talking about the agency and the autonomy. What are some other keys in terms of helping retain and make that back door small?
Yeah, I think it came to life for me this weekend. One of our
Okay.
instructors got married. And so there were 4 of us that went to his wedding. And it's just really awesome, I think, when we can show up for each other in those spaces outside of work. We have a small group. At any time, there are probably 7 or 8 instructors that are working with us. Um, and he's been with us for quite some time. But his new wife came up to me and said, I want you to look around and I want to thank Smart Solutions for this wedding, for helping with this wedding. And I was like, I didn't help with this wedding. Chris worked on to on this wedding. And she's like, yeah, but you provided the opportunity that he could, teach all these different classes and do different things. And that was really cool for me because I think that
Oh,
we
wow.
show up for each other. I shared with you that I have MS. So at different points, I've had to take a step back. And they're really quick to say, Meg, I'll sub your class. I've got this. And these are teachers that have been working all day. So I think
Mm.
end of the day, I think there is a mutual respect and we understand that we're all kind of in this hustle together. It's not us up here telling them, hey, these are your classes for the week. It's really, I like to think it's a team effort. Um,
Mm.
and we tried to formalize that process a little bit more. It was intuitive, I would say, up until a few years ago, but we
Mm.
started doing surveys with our instructors to kind of see what was working. What we
Mm.
thought was working might not have been what they thought was working. So that's helpful as well.
In other words, you learn, I know,
Yes.
because there's this projected image of, hey, here's what we're doing and this is working great. And then you get the feedback and it's like, well, maybe not so much. But these other things are working really cool here. I love what you're talking about in terms of participating in each other's lives. I wrote a little book recently called Becoming at Work. In fact, as we're recording this today, that book is a bestseller. So just very grateful that someone besides my mom read it. I think she reads all my stuff still. I don't know. She's not been feeling well lately, so she might have missed one a month. But anyway, that whole we've traditionally called it career advancement, but that human growth and development pathway is so important. And I think to, as my friend Dane Espegard talks about it, to really get at creating those relationships that matter, we've got to pay attention to the aspirations, the dreams of our coworkers. So how do you, through Smart Solutions VA, tap into the dreams and aspirations of the team members?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So, I mean, I think there's a few ways that we do that. I think there are like those soft checks, right? So whether it's a text, hey, how's everything going? One of our tutors that had a spouse that was in the hospital, just checking in, how's she doing?
Mhm.
But I think it needs to come through authentically. I think we've all been on teams where they say there's a culture of care, but you don't really feel that, or it happens publicly, but not privately. So I
I
think
have no idea what you're talking about. I've never heard of that.
yeah, so I think it's really that intentionality, like those little soft checks. But we started deciding that we wanted to really kind of check in with the teachers and give them a chance to, collaborate with one another as well. Because as I
Mm,
mentioned, we're all remote. They all work in different schools. They're in different counties in Virginia, so they're not even, in the same local area.
mhm.
So in these team meetings where we meet once a semester, and we might even up it to a couple times a semester because it was so valuable, we set up the meeting very similar to how we all teach our class. So we are writing teachers. So we start with some reflective writing, begrudgingly from some of them. And then, we kind of talk about what's working, what's not working. We've done a SWOT analysis a few times. And then
Sure.
we send them to breakout rooms, just like we do in our small learning communities, and they talk with each
Mhm.
other. And at first I was
Mhm.
a little nervous to kind of set this up, like, hey, this is how we teach our classes. But I think you can even just feel the energy when they come back. Sometimes the conversation can go to like the things that aren't working for them outside of our company, like in their schools. But
Yeah.
all of it kind of trickles back in because what's happening outside of work impacts what's happening inside of work. And we all know that.
Mm,
So um, those are some ways I think more recently that we're really kind of formally checking in with them and keeping those conversations open. We've all been parts of surveys too, where they say, we're not collecting your email, but tell us how you feel. And of course, nobody can tell you, tell you because they can still see your email. So
yeah,
we
that's
send out
right.
a survey and say, just be honest. Like we know, we're looking at this, but give us some feedback. And they're pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. Like this,
Mm,
this is something we really like. This is something you probably, we need to slow down on. So that's really helpful because I know I can go pedal to the metal. So it's good for me to kind of get reeled back in and to hear
mm.
from them, like we're feeling some burnout. It's really helpful to get that feedback.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Communication is key, isn't it? Let me ask you a question. What if the key to growing your work culture hides in plain sight? Take the free Work Positive Culture Assessment to discover it. Get insights in less than 4 minutes that transform your culture so you grow people and profits. You just answer 13 simple questions and discover your culture stage, strengths, and personalized next steps. Get your free aha culture moment at workpositive.today. Go to workpositive.today right now. Dr. Megan Waldron is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. You've heard us talk about her company, smartsolutionsva.com. So the link is in the show notes. Be sure to go there and we'll talk in a few minutes about exactly what you'll find when you go to smartsolutionsva.com. Meg, what challenges are you seeing? I absolutely love the positive work culture that you're creating, right, among educators. What are some of the challenges, the places where you run into a barrier or an obstacle and you go, wait a minute, Meg, how's this going to work out? That may be impediments to your own learning and development.
Yeah, I mean, I think overscheduling is the big one. So I think really finding that balance for myself, for our instructors, because as I mentioned, they're doing this in addition to their full-time jobs.
Yeah.
But I keep reminding myself, I don't think they would come back or continue or work with us during the summer if it wasn't something they found value in. To be honest, Dr. Joy, I think the biggest barrier or hurdle we're facing right now is the culture they're experiencing in their schools. Um,
Mm,
they are committed to teaching. They do not want to leave the profession, but the amount that I think is put on them in terms of state regulations and documentation, I think that really bleeds into how they're feeling after work. And I say to them, if you need a break, let us know. And they're like, no, this is where I actually get to really teach because we don't do any
wow.
grades or anything like that. We're just really doing writing instruction and then providing that feedback to students directly and their parents. So
Mm,
um, I think that is definitely a barrier. We are seeing, as we have talked about before, a lot of mental health issues in the
Mm,
schools, not just with educators, but with the students themselves.
mm,
That definitely, teachers are compassionate, altruistic people at their core. So
mm,
that I definitely can impact our instructors. So
mm.
yeah, I mean, I think those are two biggies that we've definitely tried to tackle. And I think that's why it's even more important to show up for teachers and just to remind them I'm not in the K-12 setting anymore. But I think I always teach a class because I want to keep my pulse on what they're experiencing as well.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, those are two big ones that we've been facing a lot since 2020, I would say.
Mm. Compassion fatigue is real in helping professions, whether it's, as we were talking a moment ago, about educators or nurses. Burnout is what we see more in a, say, a more traditional corporate setting. What do you do to, I mean, you obviously stay in touch with your team members, you're doing check-ins with them, whether it's soft or hard, creating learning experiences for them, which I think is amazingly creative. Um, what do you do to monitor that burnout factor when you, because there's so many demands on them in the traditional school setting, and I understand this is their joy de vivre, getting to teach without all the documentation and all the
Yeah.
sideline stuff. But how do you monitor that burnout? Because
Mhm.
sometimes I don't know I'm burning out, Meg, but I'm burning around the edges.
Singeing a little.
Yeah, a slight singe. Yeah, I used to say you could smell my hair burning, but that became irrelevant a few years ago. So,
Yeah, I think I like how you said that you see a lot of the compassion fatigue in the professions like nursing and health or healthcare and education. I think teachers are also experiencing the burnout because for the first time in a long time in the profession, teachers are data analysts. That was not really a thing before. We didn't
mm,
collect data. We didn't sit at email, at the email at the computer and write emails all day.
mm,
That is an expectation now. So you have to respond to a parent
wow.
within 24 hours. So teachers are multitasking, and in my summation, nobody really multitasks very well, even though I try a lot. So I think more so than ever, this is just my own opinion. I think compassion fatigue is a real thing. I think teachers have experienced that since the dawn of time. I think the needle is being moved because of the data, and I think data is very important. So I'll backtrack on that in a second. But I think that teachers are being pushed into something that they didn't necessarily think they signed up for in terms of
Mm,
keeping tabs. I just read an article about a government teacher that has 30 different apps that he has to keep running between classes. So you have, a college board app where students are monitoring AP testing, and then you have Schoology, so there's so many different windows that
30,
are
30 apps.
30. I don't, maybe it was not 30, maybe it was 25. It was a lot. And
Oh
that's what
my
school
goodness.
looks like now. My husband works in a juvenile detention center where there is no technology. And he said it's amazing. So I love, there are a lot of benefits to tech, don't get me wrong. But I think with the
Mm,
advent of tech, you have
mhm,
kindergarten teachers that are teaching students how to use iPads, and there's required time on those different devices. So I think that's where we're really seeing teachers, they just are not able to keep all those plates spinning. And that's where that burnout is coming in.
mm, mm. Boy, there's a word of wisdom for all of us, is that is focus on what it is that brings us joy from our work and align our purpose with the company purpose and make sure that we're operating out of that sweet spot in the Venn diagram. I think if I remember that correctly, I didn't major in math and it shows, but anyway, I can say Venn diagram. It's like I know what I'm talking about. So, Dr. Megan Waldron is my guest of this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Megan, when we go to smartsolutionsva.com, what are we going to discover?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of different things. So we have samples of different articles. They run the gamut of personal experiences to what's happening in education. So we have different teachers that will write for us. We also have all of our different class offerings. So we work with students from third grade through 12th grade. We have
Uh-huh.
students all across the world. So yeah, we have a lot of different offerings, and then we also obviously have different media in terms of writing skills and things like that.
Sure. Amazing. Okay. Smartsolutionsva.com is the site. Be sure to go there. Your LinkedIn profile is also
Mhm.
a good place for us to hit you up because
Sure.
that's in the show notes there, so we can connect with you as a first level connection and then send you a message there and discover more about learning and development. I've learned a lot today. Thank you so much for that. Work Positive Nation always wants to learn one thing. So, Dr. Megan Waldron, what's one thing, your one thing that you would encourage Work Positive Nation to do today to create the kind of positive work culture that we're talking about?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think it's really important to ask intentionally how people want to be recognized. So I think a lot of times we think people want to be recognized in a monetary fashion. They want more contracts, they want more responsibility. But I started asking this question of my teachers, and their responses really blew me away and humbled me. The answers were things like, I just want a text to say that I'm doing a good job and that everything's going okay. I had a new teacher that wrote, every once in a while, can you just let me know that I'm on track and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I had another who is a published author and said, I would love recognition on social media of all the articles that I'm writing so that there's that endorsement coming from the people who I work with. So I think a lot of times what we think people need and just telling them good job or, just reminding them through an annual review or something, it's really important to differentiate just like we do for our students and to think about how people want to be recognized because it might look different than what we had thought.
There is a language of appreciation for each of us, right? And one size does not fit all. We want it customized. That's an amazing reminder for some of us, but an amazing learning for others of us that, hey, not everyone's like me or wants to be appreciated the way that I do or the way that I assume they do. So thanks for that. Dr. Megan Waldron has been my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Go right now to smartsolutionsva.com and go to LinkedIn. Both of those URLs are in the show notes. Meg, thanks so much. I've learned a great deal today. I appreciate your generosity in sharing your wisdom and your time with Work Positive Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
I'm so grateful you joined our conversation about creating positive work cultures that grow people and profits. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn today. Just search for Dr. Joey Fawcett, or you can click the link in your show notes. When you send your connection request, mention you're a Work Positive Podcast listener because I want to give you a free digital copy of my Work Positive Team Edition book. It's a $19.95 value, but I want to share it with you free because it contains practical strategies that I personally use with clients to transform toxic work environments into thriving cultures. We explore in that book how to create a positive work culture, and we do so again in every episode of this podcast. Our LinkedIn connection allows you and me to directly talk about your specific challenges, so feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I personally read and respond to all those messages because I genuinely care about your work positive success. So go to LinkedIn and let's connect. Remember to mention you're a podcast listener to receive your free Work Positive Team Edition book. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Work Positive Podcast.